Hi, I'm Penny Herron, and I designed the 45-degree kaleidoscope and Dresden plate ruler for Creative Grids. The reason I wanted this ruler is because I wanted to do Dresden plates and kaleidoscope blocks, and I needed a 45-degree angle at the top. So in this particular case, it is a 45-degree angle, so if I am putting a block together, I need 8 of these triangular segments. There is gripper around the entire outside edge and down the middle, and the numbering system is right down the middle, so it is very easy to use. There is an MS tag so that you can use this if you have an iPhone and watch this video from the ruler. So if you lose your instructions, the directions are right here. Now, the easiest block to do with this is a kaleidoscope, and this is one of a series of triangle rulers that were all designed to sew strips together and then to cut them in units, so you can get very complicated looking blocks very easily and in a much larger size than traditional blocks. So in this particular case, I simply sewed 4 2.5-inch strips together, alternating red and white, and this was the entire width of the fabric from selvage to selvage. I took the ruler, lined the lines on the ruler up with the seam lines and the top and bottom up, rotary cut here, and continued to flip it around and rotary cut all my pieces, so I would be able to get 10 of these segments out of every strip of fabric from selvage to selvage if I am cutting them 8.5 inches wide, which is the height of the ruler. So here are the ones that I have already cut, and if you'll notice, because I rotate the ruler 180 degrees with each cut, I get 4 with the white on the tip and 4 with the red on the tip. So when I sew these together, I am going to end up with a 16-inch kaleidoscope block in just a matter of minutes. I would sew these together now in pairs, and then I would sew those pairs together to get a half of the block, and then sew those 2 halves together to get the whole. Now, these seams were all pressed towards the red fabric, so when I go to stitch them, the seams will automatically be butted together like this, and it's very easy to sew and match the seams from side to side. So once I have these all sewn together, you'll notice I have an 8-sided shape. So I have an octagon instead of a square. So all I'm going to do is measure this length, and when I take a ruler and measure that, it's just a little bit more than 7 inches. So I'm going to take a square and cut a 7-inch square, cut it in half on the diagonal, and once this is all sewn together, I am going to add these on the outside edges. And these are oversized slightly, so I can trim them up to size when I'm done. But see, when I add these, I'm going to end up with a 16-inch kaleidoscope block that you can sew in 15-20 minutes. Now, once I have this, I can take any ruler. I happen to have the 16.5-inch squared up and fussy cut ruler by Creative Grids. If you notice, this has horizontal, vertical, and diagonal lines set up for a pinwheel. So I would take these, because a kaleidoscope, these lines are not down the middle. This would go down the middle of the segments, each one of these segments. And I can square up the corners by simply moving this down. The 1/4 inch is marked on the outside edge. And I can square up each corner with this, which will give me a perfect 16.5-inch square. So that is one use of this ruler. I love kaleidoscopes and Dresden plates because they have 8 segments. So I'm literally going to take all of these segments, alternate colors, sew them together as pairs, then take those pairs, sew them together so I have half of the block, and then those halves sewn together make the whole. So it really only takes 3 times at the sewing machine and 3 times to press to complete the whole block. Now, when you're doing Dresden plates, I like to have, this is a Dresden plate block, I like to have a little bit of a hole in the center because it alleviates all of that bulk in the center. But in order to create that, instead of putting the blunt tip of the ruler at the very top edge, because this is my 1/4 inch seam allowance, when I am doing a Dresden plate, I cut my fabric a 1/2 inch narrower than I really need. So in this case, for these little babies that I'm going to show you that work well on a 6-inch block, this is cut 2 3/4 inches wide. I'm going to place the 3 1/4 inch line on the ruler. And by placing that on the ruler, when I cut these, they're going to have a blunt tip up here. The other thing I want you to notice is there is a line down the center of this ruler. So if I line that line up with a design in this fabric, I can fussy cut all of these elements very quickly. And there's very little waste because I'm doing it here. I'll flip it over for the next one and cut it out right here. And so I'm going to be able to save every one of these design elements in this length of fabric. So when I have taken those and cut them all out, I'm going to cut 4 like this and 4 that are plain fabrics like this. So I'll need 8 of these segments, 4 of the print, 4 of the solids to make my block. All you do is take these and fold them in half, and I'm going to stitch right across the top of these and chain them all. So I now have 4 of the prints and 4 of the solid colors all stitched right along the top here. And then I'm going to clip them apart, and I literally take this and just flip this out, and it will self-face the block. So once I flip that fabric is pulled to the back where that seam is, and that creates the point. So I take 4 of these and 4 of my prints, and I put them right sides together, and I'm going to sew them all into pairs. So here are my 4 pairs, and notice that they are always in the same order, so I always have to place the same print on top or the solid fabric. In this case, I put the solid fabric on top because I want to sew a 1/4 inch seam here, and it really matters that it matches at the top. It doesn't matter if it matches at the bottom because I'm going to cover that with my circle applique. So now you can see that I fed these all through the machine, and I chain piece them again, cut them apart, and I press the seam open because I want to alleviate the bulk that's created by the self-facing. Then I take those units, put them right sides together, and now I've created both halves of the block. When I take these and sew them together, I'm going to end up with this unit right here. So they go together very, very quickly. And see how pretty that is? It really looks like a square within a square, and you can see that all of these were fussy cut, so you see the same design in each segment of the print. And then I just take circle, and this is freezer paper, and I turn this with a glue stick over the edge of this, and I have a perfect circle for my center. So it is very easy to do. I can also take those units, and without turning the top, I sew them together, which creates the kaleidoscope, but then I did a template on the back of here which gave me perfect curves on this, and I can take that same thing, put my circle in the middle, and I have a perfect round Dresden plate without any of the work. In the quilt behind me, I took 2 strips, 2 2.5 inch strips, and sewed them together. Again, I folded it in half on that seam, so I had this as a self-face point. And in this case, instead of doing a circle, which is more traditional in the center, I did a square. And that square accents the fact that this is a square within a square, and this is a square within a square, and you get a whole different look. In this particular block, we appliqued these on a square, and I just added triangles to the corner just like you would a snowball block, and then this is actually a corner post that is included in the sashing. Now here's another example of a quilt that uses this ruler, and in this particular case we did the same snowballing effect, and in this case we did do the circle, but this floats because we put the triangles out further, but these almost touch on the sides. So it is a very easy thing to do, but the block looks totally different when it's done in shades of brown, and it has a circular center. This is always a favorite quilt with my students. In this case, This is the exact same kaleidoscope that I showed you, but in this case I elongated the center and made it an oval. So by using golds, now it looks like a sunflower, but in actuality it is just 8 segments of that Dresden plate ruler. So enjoy working with this tool. It goes together very quickly. You can make about 30 of these in 4 or 5 hours. So it really, once you have it cut out, it takes about 15 minutes a block. I appliqued these down on the machine with a narrow zigzag and a monofilament on top and used a beige thread in the bottom. So this entire quilt and everything you've seen has all been done on the machine, but none of it shows. So Dresden plates just aren't for handwork anymore.